YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here. Gonna bring you some more online battle action in Total War Warhammer. This time coming to you, I would say live from Marbad's tomb, but this isn't live. This is just a replay, but it should be a fun one. So yesterday you all seemed to really enjoy the artillery heavy, gun heavy Empire build. So I was like, you know what? It's time for an artillery heavy Dawi build. And my opponent picked the Empire, which was interesting. He also picked a lot of artillery. So he's got a Sunmaker, cannon, hammer of witches, and a Hellblaster volley gun. And this volley gun is right now regretting that they exist in life, but there is some pretty significant damage being done by this rocket battery. That thing is no joke. Now the hammer of witches is better versus large, but it doesn't make it a crappy cannon. Now I'm combining two cannons along with the Goblobber. Goblobber is really good at routing enemy artillery because of the damage that it does. I moved forward a little bit, but then didn't realize that I'd gotten into the range of my opponent's volley gun, which is not good. And my opponent is rightfully focusing on my Goblobber, which is, I think, smart. Because otherwise it'll take my cannons a long time to route, but you can see the effects of the Goblobber help route units faster. This forces my opponent's army forward. Now he has an interesting army. He's got a Celestial Wizard with Curse the Midnight Wind. He's got a Jade Wizard with healing. And then he's got Volkmar on his Pimp Wagon here. But he doesn't have the Banishment thing. But you can see he is doing a lot of damage to me. A lot of damage. It is not good right now. Like, my Longbeards have taken a beating. I am using two Trollhammer torpedoes as well, and I've split them up between flanks. I was basically going to determine how to deploy them based on what my opponent did. I'm using a Rune Lord, front line of Dwarf Warriors, and then I have a Master Engineer supporting my artillery because I wanted the buffs to damage and range and everything else. My opponent's going to come forward with his Flagellant Volkmar army here. I should say Flatulent Volkmar army. Man, that rocket battery, though, seriously, that thing has not been nice to me. My Rune Lord, I'm just waiting for him to charge, and my runes are just finishing up in terms of the cooldown, so I'll be able to buff my men right when the battle begins, or my Dawi, I should say. And then my Trollhammer torpedoes, I need to target Volkmar. I lose track of him initially, and he charges straight through my lines, as most chariots do to dwarves. And I've also got my Master Engineer back here that I temporarily lost track of, but the initial fight doesn't go well for me. My opponent comes in, he drops an Earth Blood. He's basically trying to heal blob the center, but on the flanks he's going to lose. His Flagellants out here are matched up against Slayers and Miners. He's going to lose. And then it's going to be the same thing over here. He's overmatched, so he'll do well in the center, but if I can just hold him, I have a good chance of winning. And then I realize, like, hey, Volkmar's back here, so I turn my Trollhammer torpedoes. Volkmar is a pretty big target for Trollhammer torpedoes, and so they are going to be well suited for causing considerable damage to him. He's using some damage resistance right now, which is helping him, and my opponent does not make any attempt on my Iron Drakes with Volkmar, which is interesting. He also didn't have any cavalry, and his artillery has been focused on my artillery, and really my Trollhammer torpedoes now are the big threat, and you can see that after they get warmed up, Volkmar starts to drop in a big hurry. In a big hurry. So my Rune Lord is holding off this entire blob by himself, because what are Flagellants going to do to a Rune Lord? Nothing, that's what. And the Rune Lord will actually do pretty decent there. I brought up the Master Engineer because he has a debuff to surrounding enemy units, and I wanted to help get that up closer to play. And then my Master Engineer is also trying to shoot at Volkmar, and he is shooting at him occasionally, like he just took a pot shot there. He has pretty good armor-piercing missile damage if you can actually get him to where he'll fire, and you can see that my Trollhammer torpedoes chased off Volkmar. So now there's a nice juicy little blob here in the center. My Rune Lord is blobbing up a lot of Flagellants, and I should be able to use the Iron Drakes to kill some of these Flagellants. And then I'm going to bring my my Master Engineer into combat over here because one of his Flagellants is breaking through, and all I need to do is just keep him pinned down. The Master Engineer really isn't bad at melee. He's not bad at all. So the Rune Lord's holding folks up here. The Volkmar decides to come back and make another run here. Not an ideal place to charge. He should be going after my infantry blobs. You can say he's taking cannon hits, and he's going to immediately get hit by Trollhammer torpedoes when he comes through the line, and that's the end of the pimp wagon. So at this point, my opponent's artillery did win, and it came back, but the rockets run out of ammo quick, and his cannons are not going to be able to flip this battle around. With the loss at Volkmar, and he did use Curse of the Midnight Wind earlier, but right when he used Curse of the Midnight Wind, I used the Master Rune of Oath and Steel. So even though he took away all my attack, I buffed up all my armor, which should have pretty much offset that. So Flagellants are terrible against armor. It's an interesting army. I like that he did a thematic thing with Volkmar and Flagellants, since Volkmar does that in campaign. And I think a chariot versus a dwarf army is not a bad thought on its face. In fact, it could be a rather good thought. But in this case, Flagellants just don't have the punching power to get through. Every single dwarf infantry unit is armored. And Flagellants do nice damage, but they do not do well versus armor. If Plague of Rust was an area of effect spell, like I think it used to be, that would be a different story. In that case, Plague of Rust could definitely make a Flagellant army potentially good against dwarves. But otherwise, I would not recommend it, and it's for this reason. Like, he hit me hard at the beginning, and a lot of my infantry units deteriorated quick, but as soon as his healing wore off, and my ruins started coming in, and, you know, the grind-out fight comes, just not going to go in favor of the Flagellants. So all the artillery chain routes, watch this. Look how kind I am to my own troops. I was like, I'm going to win. Why not do some point-blank cannoneering here? See my Dawi approve of this as well. So we're going to see whether or not we can point-blank shoot a Flagellant. I'm missing with most of the volleys, but come on, do it. Fire into the blob. Nope, it's not going to happen. So this time it's a Pyrrhic victory, but it was relatively straightforward there. I didn't realize I'm in the hotel room and the air conditioner came on. Hold on. Hope that wasn't on terribly long, because those things are like stupid loud in the hotels, and I hope it didn't show up too much in the microphone. But in any case, appreciate the fun game from my opponent. I like that he's using creative armies, and that was kind of my goal here too, was to do something a little bit different. A lot of people always get frustrated thinking, why does Dawi artillery suck so bad? It doesn't really suck. The dwarf artillery is actually pretty darn good. The Goblobber is really good. The cannons are not bad. Flame cannon, if you could ever find a way to use it, is actually really good. Like, the dwarf artillery is good. The challenge is keeping it safe with the dwarves. So I did this on Marbad's Tomb because there's not a lot of maneuvering room for cavalry. It makes it easier for me to potentially keep it safe. And then you can see that I had the Trollhammer torpedoes as a contingency. Like, if he brings a Flying Lord in, and he's like, all right, I'm going to dive bomb something. Well, what's he going to dive bomb? If he goes for my artillery, the Iron Drakes are going to smoke the Flying Lord. If he goes for one of the Iron Drakes, the other Iron Drake can keep firing, and my Master Engineer can shoot him too. And then the cannons could shoot at him. So that was kind of the idea, is I would give a Flying Lord too many targets to get all at once, but that also meant that I had to be careful about the map I choose, because had I chosen a map where the Empire can get around and move, they could easily get cavalry into your back lines, and a 3 artillery, 2 Iron Drake build is going to fall apart really fast. It's going to be like, it's going to fall apart faster than a Kleenex at a snot party. How about that? I got that off of Futurama one time. It was pretty funny. Yeah, in any case, there's your bad joke for the day. But in any case, yeah, I hope this was fun. Hope you all enjoyed the army. What other kind of stuff do you like to see? I think it's fun to not forget, like, a lot of times in Total War, like the history of Total War games, artillery has been crappy, or it's been looked upon with like disgust. Like, you can't ever use artillery in a game. And Warhammer's interesting. There's a lot of very useful artillery units in this game, and even to this day, like, a lot of people don't make use of them. Sometimes people do, but a lot of people don't make use of it because it's almost like there's this Total War stigma against artillery. Like, if you use artillery, you're a noob, you're a camper, and there's a lot of other names that aren't so pretty that people try and call you for using artillery. It's a part of the game. And I think that what's important is when you're playing the game and you're thinking about what your opponent's going to do, sometimes like very predictable styles of play will develop in a Total War game. And when you take something less predictable, it's just fun. And you have to think about it, you know, when you get into a multiplayer match, And let's say, for instance, that I get into a match in the map, and it's not going to show up right here, but let's say it's the grassy craplands or whatever they call it in Warhammer. It's multiplayer crossroads. Yeah, probably don't take an artillery army like that, because you're probably not going to be able to defend it. Yesterday, whenever I was on, what's the name of that? Is it Skull? I don't remember what the Southern. Yeah. I don't remember what the name of the one was that I played on yesterday, but you know, it's like the. I'll remember it when is it Winterpire? No, but that's a crappy map in and of itself as well. But yeah, in any case, there's maps on this game that if you get to know the maps, you'll know when is the right time to choose that type of army. So like, for instance, if I was on a more open map against the Empire, I probably would have done more like a rune rush in order to try and defeat them. Whereas like if I was you know, playing on this map where I had a little more room to be defensive and have a place to protect my artillery, then that's the way I would go. Also, one other thing just wanted to cover real quick. So my opponent picked 2 wizards in this case, and he clearly had a purpose for each one. One of them was to try and do like a blob heal or to heal Volkmar or whatever else is needed. And then he had another wizard that was just there to debuff my units. This is not necessarily a bad thing to pick 2 wizards, but you think about it, he was going to have to try and get rid of a lot of my dwarf infantry with flagellants, and they don't have the armor piercing. And by buying 2 wizards, he spent a considerable amount more money. And then in the end, the flagellants still weren't able to get the job done. So if you think about, like, I like that he was thinking, like, hey, I'm going to use Curse of the Midnight Wind to debuff enemy infantry, and I'm going to use the healing to basically buff my own guys. Problem with that is it doesn't overcome the armor piercing. And so I think that, you know, with just a couple of tweaks to the thought here, like, so for instance, if my opponent had a couple of swordsmen, or if he was using Curse of the Midnight Wind in conjunction with great swords, I would have been in trouble. It would have been some pretty serious trouble, in fact, because the great swords are already a pretty good match, and if he had brought in Curse of the Midnight Wind and just cut through my center, he could have gotten to my artillery potentially, or my other stuff. So I think there's definitely ways, or you could use Curse of the Midnight Wind and get a good cavalry charge, where basically your units can't do any damage in return to the cavalry. Dwarves struggle with cavalry. So there's a lot of things that he could have done with Curse. So I don't necessarily disagree with the idea that he was working on. I just think that the units that went along with it weren't the most complimentary. Anyway, but I do appreciate the game for my opponent. I appreciate every time I get to play against someone, and especially if they're viewers and stuff. I don't know if my opponent was a viewer. I don't know if he typed anything to me, but one way or the other, thanks for the game. It was fun. Appreciate MSI sponsoring the channel. Stick around tomorrow. I'm finally going to be able to put out the video around the performance of the new parts they gave me, if that's something you're interested in. If it's not, no big deal. There'll be more Total War content. And then appreciate those of you who come here every day to watch this. You're fantastic. You're what makes this fun for me. I mean, I'm out here on the road working this week, and I look forward to coming back to the hotel and getting to record videos for you. It's a pleasure, and I do hope you enjoy it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you tomorrow.